Las Vegas, a city like an endless dance of lights set against the dry desert sands. As night falls, rows of vibrant neon signs burst in red, green, and yellow like artificial stars in a harsh sky. The sound of jackpot bells mixes with swing music and twirling dancers on the shiny plastic floors. The smell blends cigar smoke, rich coffee, and the syrupy sauce clinging to the neck of a martini glass. Everything makes anyone who steps onto the strip feel as if they've entered another universe, where a dream of a better life could be just one spin of the roulette wheel away. But just behind the luxurious velvet curtains, in the dark alleys and empty lots along the roadside, there are people battling the thirst for a place to call home. They are the forgotten veterans from their hometowns, exhausted hotel workers, and young families struggling to scrape together enough for rent. Small tents patched with torn plastic sheets, scrap wood, and thin blankets form their makeshift worlds with no address, no future. The desert winds blow dust into their eyes, the sun scorches their skin by day, and the cold bites at their bones by night, creating an ever-present gloomy fog. Today, we won't step into the glittering casinos or the gold-plated hotel lobbies. Instead, let's take a turn into the backstage of Las Vegas, a place where every breath, every step of the vulnerable lives here reflects a predicament demanding urgent attention. This journey will lead us through streets covered with tents, through eyes filled with salt and dreams left unfulfilled, to understand that beyond the dazzling lights, life is struggling in the silence of longing. Corridor of Hope, a corridor of broken hope. Along Formaster Avenue, just a stone's throw from the dazzling center of Las Vegas, there's a road poetically named the Corridor of Hope. However, the deeper you go, the more you realize it's just a misleading name. By day, the desert sun strikes down like a hot rod of gold, making the flimsy nylon tents into mobile furnaces. At night, when the streetlights flicker, the tents, made of scrap wood and rusted metal frames, appear like ghosts urgently searching for shelter. The musty smell of household waste mixed with the stench of used syringes fills the air, creating a pungent cocktail that weighs down on the stillness. Just a few blocks away from the luxurious homes on the Strip, the Corridor of Hope has become a hotspot for the homeless. This area was once planned as a community service center, but the reality is tragic. Hundreds of people, from disoriented veterans, exhausted casino workers, to young families trapped by skyrocketing rent, have found their way here like the last grains of sand in the desert. They set up makeshift tents tied with ropes, where a strong wind or a rainstorm could blow away their fragile existence. Every time Las Vegas officials carry out a sweeps campaign clearing out the tents, it feels like the city is shedding its ugly skin, but only for a moment. According to data from the Las Vegas Homeless Services Center, every week, 35 to 50 new people come to take shelter, like an endless stream dragging along unfortunate lives. The tents may be cleared, but just seconds later, those torn tarps and pieces of wood are gathered again, rebuilt into even larger, more crowded shelters. In early 2025, the largest sweep in 5 years erupted like an unexpected storm. More than 400 people were forced to leave their temporary shelters, with tents being dismantled amid the clatter of metal and the sounds of people groaning. The chaotic scene, blankets flying in all directions, belongings scattered across the ground, and sometimes quick embraces between people trying to hold on to the last warmth. But only 1 in 5 were placed in shelters or transitional housing. The rest vanished like ash, forced to live in abandoned cars, under overpasses, or in desolate parks on the outskirts of the city. From here, the cycle of tragedy begins. Evicted, new camps set up, then evicted again. Each life seems to become an endless journey between hope and disappointment. Instead of receiving sustainable help, they only get temporary measures, and when public attention fades, everything returns to square one. This image not only reflects the failure of urban policies, but also exposes a system that lacks humanity, focusing only on cleaning up appearances while forgetting the people inside. Amid the faded tarps and cold metal frames, hope still flickers, but it's too small to lift anyone. The Corridor of Hope has now become a testament to unacknowledged abuse, where the right to live is erased by the pressures of the economy and the city's fame. And as we hear the desert winds rustling through the tents, let us ask, are we so absorbed in chasing the spotlight that we forget about the lives struggling in the dark? The cycle of addiction and social instability. When night falls on the Corridor of Hope, It's not just the sound of desert winds rustling through the nylon tents, but the quiet hum of an underground market. Drugs. Under the harsh yellow streetlights of Formaster Avenue, small fentanyl packets the size of grains of sand, methamphetamine pills glistening like cold dew drops, and streaks of smooth white heroin powder are passed hand to hand among the desperate. The smoke rising from the gleaming needles scattered across the dusty ground gives off a sharp chemical scent, a deadly aroma that once inhaled leads to an inescapable addiction. The corner near the Salvation Army shelter has turned into an open-air market for these illicit transactions. There, whispered agreements are heard alongside the crackling sound of plastic bags and the desperate, longing eyes of those holding the blessing of the drugs. Police patrol regularly, but their numbers are few, and the alleys, covered in thick darkness, have created a gray zone where the law only exists on paper. Sometimes, all it takes is the distant scream or the sound of a needle hitting the concrete floor to awaken the reality, a tragedy unfolding right before our eyes in a society that seems unable to sleep through its own injustices. As drugs spread through the tents, a public health crisis quickly erupts like a smoldering fire. Data from the Clark County Health Department reveals that in the first 6 months of 2025 alone, Las Vegas recorded over 1,200 overdose cases, a number that shocks even the most experienced experts. This marks a 27% increase compared to the same period last year, with each overdose serving as a sharp warning sign of a society suffering from an undercurrent of destruction. At University Medical Center, the emergency room corridor is always filled with beds, the ventilators groaning nonstop. Doctors and nurses, their heads wrapped in white cloth, eyes dark from sleepless nights, fight against the wail of ambulance sirens and the groans of patients. Many have no health insurance, clutching their chests in pain, waiting for an expensive life-saving drug they don't know when will come, or in a state of unconsciousness, leaving this world in silence without a word of farewell. And if the healthcare system is on the brink of exhaustion, the city's addiction treatment centers seem like lonely islands amidst the ocean of addiction. Currently, Las Vegas only has 2 public rehab facilities with a total of fewer than 90 inpatient beds. Meanwhile, the community's need for support can exceed 1,000 cases each month. The waiting list stretches on. With hundreds of names, some have waited for years just to get a place to lie down in a private room with a nurse's care. Many addicts are forced to leave the shelter due to dangerous behavior, only to be left out in the vast streets, seeking solace in needles and the ever-present craving, like a smoldering fire. With no way out, they plunge into the tragic cycle: addiction, overdose, inadequate treatment, evicted from shelter, returning to addiction. Each passing day leaves a new scar on their bodies and souls. The pale faces, vacant eyes, and trembling hands clutching drug vials all become haunting images, exposing the helplessness of a city that focuses solely on maintaining a polished exterior while its insides crumble. Further still, the addiction crisis has led to a collapse of community mental health. In front of the Corridor of Hope, groups of volunteers once arrived with overflowing enthusiasm and baskets of warm goods. They distributed light meals, blankets, and personal hygiene products like angels in a hellish world. But after months of witnessing repeated personal tragedies, many have fallen into a state of mental exhaustion. Some have left their roles, returning to their closed homes in search of a little peace. Some volunteers cry in their cars when they can't save a young student spiraling into the fentanyl abyss. The residents around this area have also lost their calm. Many families have quietly moved away, locked their doors, and painted "no trespassing" signs on their walls to avoid the pleading eyes of the homeless. Some neighbors turn on air conditioners 24/7 to drown out the sound of syringes clinking, or put up signs reading "Neighborhood Police Patrol regularly" as an invisible deterrent. The air here has become suffocating, as if the entire community is living with an unnamed fear. Amid the luxurious buildings on the Strip, the soothing lounge music cannot drown out the sighs of despair somewhere in the night. As the neon lights of the casinos continue to shine brightly, the gray zone of drugs and social instability continues to rage behind the scenes that few wish to reveal. And as we witness this never-ending chain of tragedy, we must ask, a city built on the American dream, can it accept that, just beneath the dance of luxury, there are souls abandoned in the dark, silently crying for help? The cost of housing strangles the dream of Las Vegas. Las Vegas was once a land of dreams, where people believed that simply stepping onto the strip would open the door to life-changing opportunities. The sound of the jackpot bells echoed along with the casino music, making many hearts beat with hope. One click, one bet, and you could become a millionaire. However, when you step away from the dazzling lights, you encounter a completely different scene: the staggering costs of living. The rent for a studio apartment, the little jewel for singles or young couples, has now reached $1,800 per month. On paper, these are just numbers with no meaning, but for hotel workers, those who serve tourists day and night, that figure represents nearly all of their $2,200, $2,500 monthly income after taxes. Imagine waking up every morning, no longer thinking about breakfast or a warm cup of coffee, but only about the few $100s left before the door to your rented home. As rental prices continue to rise, the demand for affordable housing has become even more urgent. However, instead of seeing more low-income housing, Las Vegas has witnessed a boom in gentrification, the process of urban restructuring for the benefit of the wealthy. In the Arts District, once a small alley with independent cafes and art studios, now stand luxury apartment buildings with marble lobbies, security card systems, and infinity pools on the rooftop. Henderson, a once peaceful suburb, is now linked with upscale shopping malls, fine dining restaurants, and internationally renowned brand stores. Downtown, the bustling heart of Vegas has turned into a business complex with flagship stores glowing with neon lights. Meanwhile, other suburban or peripheral areas, while having cheaper rents, remain far from the city center. The daily commute from there to the Strip is a costly journey in both time and money. In the midst of the city's beautification and transformation wave, low-income families, hotel workers, bartenders, cleaning staff, taxi drivers can't compete. They cling to cramped rooms in old apartment complexes, where the walls are covered with mold and the pipes leak. Some young families must leave their children at friends' houses to squeeze into a 20-meter squared room, worrying about paying the rent and cutting back on meals, reducing vegetables or proteins. Others carry their luggage and personal belongings, prepared to be evicted, ready to move to another corner of the city to set up a plastic tent. And when these people turn to social assistance programs, they wait in vain. The waiting list for public housing in Clark County has exceeded 35,000 people, including returning veterans, disabled individuals, single mothers, and low-income families. Meanwhile, the city only manages about 4,000 subsidized apartments reserved for priority groups. That number alone is a container unable to handle the constant flow of demand. With a ratio of nearly 9-to-1, each public housing application is almost just a piece of worthless paper, as the wait can extend from 2 to 3 years, long enough for a child to grow up, for a single mother to exhaust all efforts, or for a veteran to lose hope of finding a home. In this context, many choose to leave their hopes in Las Vegas and move to nearby cities with a lower cost of living, even if it means giving up the illusion of the Strip's glamour. The rest of the involuntary residents of the tents continue fighting each day with golden sand, with the burning desert winds, and with the constant fear of losing their makeshift shelter at any moment. This cycle appears as an urban tragedy. The American dream suffocated not by a lack of money, but by an urban system that prioritizes profit and fame over human dignity. While the casino lights still shine brightly above, and thousands of tourists continue streaming in and out of dozens of resorts, don't forget to look down at the ground where the hurried steps of tourists leave behind barefoot footprints of the homeless. They wait tiredly for a policy that truly understands them, not just empty promises. It is in the gap between the glamour and the darkness that social injustice reveals itself most clearly, demanding that we look directly, act, and change our views and treatment of those whose lives are fading on the edge of the dream. The patchwork policy and fragmented support system. Losing a home is already a tragedy, and half-hearted policies that attempt to resolve the issue are like throwing a stone into a shattered dream. In 2021, Las Vegas introduced the no camping law, banning the erection of tents or any temporary structures on sidewalks, parks, and public land. The goals sounded noble: clean up the city, restoring its elegant appearance for tourists. However, for thousands of homeless people looking for shelter, it was not aid but the criminalization of poverty and the stripping of their right to exist. Immediately after the law came into effect, the sound of patrol cars echoed through the corridor of hope. Just seeing a tent, even one as fragile as paper, resulted in a citation, with all the temporary possessions being confiscated. The police did not escort them to shelters but simply stopped to collect data, count the tents, and left. The displaced residents lost their shelter, carrying their belongings and moving to another hidden corner to set up camp again, continuing the endless cycle of evict, build, evict. Identification papers, seemingly simple, became the harshest invisible barrier. It is estimated that about 40% of the homeless have no ID due to loss, theft, or lack of funds to pay for replacements. For them, an ID is not just a piece of paper, but the key. No ID, no assistance, no legal job, no access to shelters or medical registration. Every time they visit the aid counter, they hold food vouchers or medical requests, but always hear the same response: missing identification. That rejection feels like a slap to their hope, sending them spiraling in despair, unable to find where to turn for help. Recognizing the growing demand for housing, the government launched a rental assistance voucher program, a subsidy for part of the monthly housing costs. In theory, this solution would help low-income families avoid falling into homelessness. However, in practice, many landlords exploit the loopholes, raising rents to profit from the subsidy. An apartment costing $2,300/month after the voucher still requires tenants to pay an additional $600, while their monthly income is only $2,200, $2,500. Many families, after covering rent, abandon the assistance program and return to living in tents or old cars on the streets, because at least there they don't have to worry about covering the extra rent that exceeds their budget. The lack of transparency and poor coordination between agencies has further exacerbated the situation. Data from the health department is not synchronized with the housing and social welfare department, causing poor people's records to be constantly lost between offices. Some individuals are approved for vouchers, but their identity is duplicated in the system, causing them to be denied assistance despite being eligible. In some cases, social workers delay updating information, and when those in need arrive, they are placed at the back of the line, waiting for thousands of other cases in the digital system. The waiting period stretches over months, even years, long enough for any hope to wither away. While the government and public agencies struggle with reports and numbers, nonprofit organizations, shelters, food banks, volunteer groups bear the burden of filling in the gaps in policy. They open additional food distribution points, hand out blankets, rice, and canned food. However, under the pressure of the no camping law, these distribution points cannot be placed near the camps but must be moved farther away, sometimes several miles. When the homeless sneak across empty roads to collect food, they face the 40 degrees Celsius heat during the day and 10 degrees Celsius cold at night in the desert, along with the constant fear of being fined at any moment. Even more sadly, many volunteers quietly withdraw. They are exhausted after countless times witnessing families being pushed out onto the streets after desperate hugs and hopeless tears. One volunteer shared, "I came to help, but then realized I'm just wiping away tears, not changing the system." When resources run out and compassion is not strong enough to wait for a change in the law, the thin blankets and free meals are like flickering lights in the sandstorm. All these broken pieces come together to form a fragmented social support system. Policies are implemented that only address the surface, clearing tents, issuing fines, handing out symbolic vouchers, and leaving the poor to navigate the maze of bureaucratic procedures. No policy has been deep or integrated enough to guide them from surviving to living, from temporary shelters to sustainable homes, from short-term support to long-term self-sufficiency. And while the casino lights still shine brightly, people often forget to look below, where lives are silently crying for help. The Corridor of Hope is not just a story of tents or needles, but a reflection of a system that has forgotten its reason for existence: the people. When policies only focus on cleaning up the surface and forget the root causes of the issue, we, as a community, are leaving behind a huge moral debt, waiting for the day when it will return to demand accountability. The bitter contrast: a lavish city and a forgotten world. Just a few steps from the golden hotel chains and sparkling casinos on the Strip, there are alleys scattered with soda cans, fast food wrappers, and oil stains on the sidewalk. During the day, tourists decked out in designer outfits, holding sparkling handbags, hand over $100 bills to buy an $8 cup of coffee, while just across an almost invisible boundary, the homeless rummage through garbage cans, hoping to find leftover bread crusts. At night, Neon lights pour down onto the street like rivers of light, while on another street corner, an elderly person huddles beneath a thin tarp, and a young woman shivers, holding a fish tank, the one thing she believes offers some warmth. Las Vegas was designed and operates to nurture the dream of entertainment, an outdoor stage with laser lights crossing the night sky, luxury suites grander than palaces, conference rooms worth millions of dollars. Every year, tens of millions of tourists flock to the city, hoping to immerse themselves in opulence and forget reality. And to keep that massive flow of money, the government continually pours billions of dollars into building hotels, resorts, and shopping centers. Meanwhile, the public land scattered around the city center, plots that could have become social housing, are grabbed by real estate corporations and turned into resorts, casinos, and gambling establishments, rather than affordable apartment complexes for low-income earners. Behind this curtain of prosperity, the government carries out cleanup campaigns of the homeless, not to support them, but to hide them from the tourists. When handsome foreign visitors take photos outside the Bellagio, they won't witness the officers chasing off homeless individuals, confiscating their tarps and blankets, as if erasing traces of a parallel world. They are not taken to shelters, nor are they given the warmth of a thin blanket. The nylon tents are hurriedly torn down, belongings scattered across the ground. But no one counts the number. No one records names, only silence remains, and a few hours later, the tarps and lives are rebuilt into new temporary shelters in other areas, farther from the center, colder and lonelier. And the once bustling streets, where generations of workers built their modest dreams, are now bulldozed, erased to make way for multi-million-dollar projects. Mary Street, once home to busy sidewalk eateries and small auto repair shops, is now a helicopter pad for a nearby resort. The old church, once a gathering place for the homeless to find some peace, is now a parking lot. The memory of a community has been erased in the whirlwind of profit, as every corner of the city must shine to serve wealthy tourists. Amidst the fairy tale-like luxury and the abandoned world resembling a nightmare, the homeless become a problem and not victims. They are not mentioned in flashy headlines, not invited to red carpets or onto television shows. They are simply quiet figures lurking behind the seductive lights of the Strip, waiting for a gentle touch of compassion, a policy deep enough to reach the heart of their pain, and a community brave enough to admit, this proud city has forgotten the most sacred part of humanity. Las Vegas, the city of neon lights, magnificent resorts, and the dazzling American dream, compels us to ask, with thousands of people losing their homes, their IDs, and even themselves, is this city still worthy of being called the Promised Land? From the corridor of hope, a corridor of shattered dreams, to the muddy, dirt-streaked tents, from the gray zone of underground drugs to the thousands of names on the social housing waiting list, each number, each face, each story is a measure of the failure of urban policies, social injustice, and the aridity of compassion. We have heard the shrill sirens, witnessed needles scattered like death's messengers, counted countless meaningless vouchers, and seen nylon tents being dismantled only to rise again. But the most horrifying part is that, amidst the hustle and bustle of the city of games, we have unwittingly forgotten them, those who are not statistics, but beings yearning for a home, an equal chance at life, a door that opens to a future. Between the dry desert and the stifling atmosphere of the Strip, the silent cry for help from mobile lives echoes louder than any disco music. We cannot stand by as the government cleans the surface while ignoring the roots of the problem. We cannot let patchwork policies continue to bind the poor in endless cycles. And we cannot remain silent while rising rents, gentrification, drugs, the no-camping law, and bureaucratic procedures stifle hope. We need more than empty promises. We need a truly human-centered urban vision based on transparent data, from tracking homeless data by address, classifying physical and mental health conditions, to accurately assessing healthcare, addiction treatment, housing, and legal support resources. We need seamless coordination between the government, social welfare agencies, public health, police, and nonprofit communities to create a network that moves from temporary shelters to stable homes, from emergency assistance to social reintegration. We must place compassion above all budget figures so that no one is left behind beneath the neon glow of the casinos. Follow the channel to continue exploring real stories of those living on the edge of the American dream. Each episode offers a different perspective where you will see aspirations, pain, and hope interwoven among lives that seem hopeless.